Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you.
Hi, I'm Bryan Firks, and here is my build, which is a 3D map of Middle Earth. So all of the micro-scale locations are kind of jumping off the brick-built parchment here. So we can start out and kind of go through the journey really quick. Of course, the journey starts in the Shire. So right here we have Bag End atop the hill there, the little hobbit hole with all of the greenery and kind of all the foliage there that place is known for. Then they continue on to Bree, which has the inn at the Prancing Pony, again all in micro scale, and some Tudor style houses there with brackets. They continue on to Weathertop, where the ring wraiths, the Nazgul, are there. You can see them as the little micro figures there with the fire. And then after that they go to Rivendell, a smaller version, slightly more affordable one than the big set that came out. And after that they continue on to the Mines of Moria here. This is the one place I had to cheat the geography a little bit because I couldn't squeeze it in between these two locations. But right here up top we have the doors where you speak friend and enter, all done with cheese slopes there. And then if you look right down below, you have the Balrog and Gandalf saying "You shall not pass" in the famous scene. So then they continue along the journey through the Argonath, through the river here, and then they end up, the Fellowship splits after this point. So then we kind of branch out into the map. Some other locations to mention are Fangorn Forest here with the Ents. You can see 3 little miniature Ents right there walking through the forest, and they're about to take down Isengard and Orthanc right here, Saruman's tower. And then some other iconic locations on the map would be Minas Tirith here, and there's a little micro Oliphant or massive elephant that comes in for the battle. And also there's the famous beacons, and they say the beacons are lit, and of course they're lit right over to Edoras in Rohan right here in the Golden Hall. And another place to point out would be Helm's Deep, which is where one of the best battle scenes of all time, in my opinion, is filmed. And so they have the little deeping wall there, and this of course is where the battlefield was. And then just to kind of wrap it up, to point out a few others, we have the Dead Marshes here, which does have glow-in-the-dark elements and some of the bones of the dead beneath the translucent bricks there for the water. And then we have Mount Doom, of course, which is one of the most iconic locations from the film, which has, you know, a huge volcano there. And then I also want to point out, before going slightly out of order, but this is Shelob's lair and the Tower of Cirith Ungol. And if you pop this off right here, you can see Shelob the spider is hiding inside with her webs. So then next to there, Minas Morgul, and then we have Osgiliath here. And then, of course, we have Barad-dûr, which is Sauron's tower, using the eyepiece that was actually featured in one of the Lord of the Rings sets, the Wizard Battle, the one with Saruman and Gandalf facing off, a little $10 set. Now that piece is worth quite a bit more than that. Yeah, so this is the map as a whole. I also included a few life-size props to go with it to kind of complete the scene. We have the Red Book here, there and back again, where Bilbo writes the story of the Hobbit that's then added on by Frodo to be the Lord of the Rings. We have a little pipe, and we have a little feather pen with an inkwell there that we'd imagine Bilbo's writing with all the time. We also, on the far corner of the map, have Frodo's sword, Sting, formerly Bilbo's sword. And actually, I'm thinking maybe one day I'll try to figure out how to make it glow in the dark when orcs come, but haven't figured that out quite yet. And then, of course, to kind of wrap it all up, we have the One Ring of Power. And this is, of course, life size, and it can be wrapped around a neck or, you know, around a wrist, whatever you want. So, yeah, this kind of completes the scene, the thing that starts off the journey and kind of completes the whole thing. So, yeah, here's the micro-scale map of Middle Earth. I really love working in this scale, trying to find really creative parts to express iconic locations in as small a size as possible. And it just started with really one build. I just kind of started with the Argonath, which is now the centerpiece of the whole thing, and just spread out from there and started to make location after location until eventually I realized I had a whole map's worth, and then I built the brick-built map underneath it.
This is incredible work. Thank you so much for the tour here. What were these couple
Oh
locations
yeah,
here?
that's right. I did miss a couple. So this one right here is Lothlorien, which is Galadriel's home world, and I really have been wanting to try this technique of jumpers just in a spiral going all the way up for a long time, and couldn't find out how to work it into a mock. And then I was looking at pictures of the trees in Lothlorien, and this seemed like the perfect thing, as those winding stairways going all the way up. And then last but not least, this is actually a very fitting last one to talk about. This is the Grey Havens, and this is where Frodo sails off into the Undying Lands at the very end of the films. And this was built actually with kind of a forced perspective scene, so everything's slightly larger up front. I used a panel-based stair technique here that they use in the Trafalgar Square set, and then as you go off into the distance, everything gets a little bit smaller, and then you have this brick-built sunset so that the ship can sail right off into the sunset of the Undying Lands.
That looks fantastic. Now, the map itself is really nice. So talk about some of the elements you use there and the techniques to kind of create that flat plane as well as fitting in the lettering there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole map is built with sideways facing brick for the most part. There were some places where I had to switch up the angle so that I could get all the plates to be just one single line. So for example, this section right here is going up and down, whereas this section is going sideways. And then I wanted to capture some of the geography as well. So you can see some mountains which are achieved using cheese slopes, and these are, you know, all the way winding around representing the Misty Mountains there. And I have a few other fun call-outs on the map, like Mirkwood Forest up here where they go in The Hobbit. And because this is Lord of the Rings, I couldn't do the Hobbit locations, but I did do a shout-out of the Lonely Mountain with the Lonely Parchment right here, which is a piece that was used in the Hobbit set of Bag End, I believe. Yeah, so this map was a blast. I really like creating the lettering again out of sideways facing bricks, and I tried to keep it as close as possible to the actual map. When I was constructing it, I actually laid out a poster I had of a real Middle-earth map and tried to construct it on top of it so I could get the proportions as close as possible to the real map.
That works perfect. And you mentioned you like building in this scale. So what are some of the pieces that you find really useful in this kind of micro scale and to capture a lot of those details that you're trying to convey for these very well-known locations that a lot of people are familiar with?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite little techniques is to create little micro scale trees. I actually use these leaf pieces right here, and you know, it's a really simple technique, but I think it really captures these little trees, especially when you face the leaves all inward. It kind of creates that kind of more rounded shape that's more organic of trees. So I really love to do that. Also, you can't go wrong with cheese slopes. There are cheese slopes all over this thing. They're like the key to life, to create kind of, you know, those jagged edges for mountains, to try to create terrain. Some other fun parts that I was kind of experimenting with is in the Balrog back here, it might be a little hard to see, but he actually has a batarang as his wings because that was the best piece that captured a wing at a really small scale. And likewise, these fell beasts that the Nazgul ride, these are only, I believe, about 7 pieces, but I wanted to make it really simple, but try to create just the overall shape and essence of those creatures so you could instantly identify them flying over the plains of Middle-earth.
Were there any scenes that didn't make it onto the map that you tried and maybe just didn't translate well, or you just ran out of space?
Yeah, I think one scene that was tricky for me to kind of wrap my head around in this type of build was Emon Hen, which is where the end battle of the Fellowship of the Ring takes place, you know, where Boromir is slain with the arrows. It doesn't have a recognizable icon to it, and so that was one that I would have loved to include, but ultimately I chose to really feature the Argonath heavily because that's kind of associated with that scene. It happens shortly before, and it's right in that same location, so that kind of took the place of Emon Hen, which really is the main location that I think I didn't get to create. Everything else, I tried to hit all the major stops, I feel like. I guess if I were to name one more, it's the Pass of Caradhras, which is the big mountain that the Fellowship climbs over, and Saruman has the snow fall down on them. They have to trudge through the snow. For that one, I realized it would ultimately look just like a big mountain, and so it didn't have any identifying features, whereas, for instance, Mount Doom is another big mountain, but it's a volcano, so you can clearly tell what it is. So I did nix the Pass of Caradhras and just figured it's represented in the little cheese slope mountain ranges that are in the map as a whole, and then left it at that.
Do you have any other plans to tackle other types of maps in this style from either movies or TV shows or books or anything like that?
I would love to. I love building maps. I've seen some similar microscale work be done for Game of Thrones, which so famously does the intro with over a big map. I would love to see all the locations of Westeros represented in microscale, so that could be a really fun project to tackle next. And then, yeah, after that, I'd have to think because Lego has done microscale Hogwarts now. So, we've been seeing a lot of Harry Potter, which is another favorite fandom of mine, done in that sort of style. So I'd say Game of Thrones is probably the next one up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for giving us a tour through all these locations here. Fantastic work, and can't wait to see what you do in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much.